What's up, guys? Tim Little. Welcome back to Tactical Bass. In today's video, we're talking about my top 5 baits for pond fishing. Summertime pond fishing, it brings me back to my childhood years. You know, I didn't have a boat, I didn't have a float tube, so I had to throw on the backpack, grab a couple rods, get permission from local farmers and ranchers to fish their ponds, and that's how I started. That's how I grew up fishing. So I have a love for pond fishing, for shore-based anglers, just for the grassroots bass fishing, right? You know, a lot of us cut our teeth bass fishing from hoofing it, from walking and fishing ponds. So today, I'm gonna give you guys some of my favorite baits that I've had and built confidence through the years, specifically pond fishing, because ponds can be a little bit different than, you know, big lakes, but a bass is a bass, right? So a lot of these favorite baits that we talk about throughout the years, a lot of these videos that we do, you can it's applicable to pond fishing. It's you can apply it to your pond fishery. So enough talking, let's talk about number 5. I'm gonna go in reverse order just because, yeah, just to switch it up. So number 5 for me, it's gonna be, did it fall already? It did, it fell. It's gonna be this guy right here. I'm gonna say a flashy swimmer, a weedless swim bait. Now, when I'm thinking about pond fishing, typically I'm fishing ponds, or at least the ponds that I've fished have an abundance of vegetation, an abundance of grass. So I want something that is Texas rigged, that something that is weedless, that I can fish over the tops of the grass, that I can skip up underneath laydowns. Again, you're shore-based, right? You can't go out there and get your bait unhooked very easily. So you want something that's weedless. You want something that's not gonna get hung up every other cast. So being weedless, being Texas rig is really important to me. So I'm taking an X-Zone swammer, whether it's a 3 or a 4-inch swim bait, and I'm putting a flashy swimmer on there. Typically, throughout the years, I'm throwing a flashy swimmer with a willow leaf blade, a willow blade. When I think pond fishing, primarily the ponds that I've fished, the main forage for these bass are bluegill. So I actually go with the flashy swimmer that has the Colorado gold blade on there. That has caught a ton of bass for me in ponds. So I will switch it up a little bit from a traditional fishery that has a lot of shad and a lot of little bait fish. If I'm fishing a pond that has a lot of bluegill and that's what those bass are eating, I'm going with that flashy swimmer with the Colorado blade. All right, number 2, how could you do a pond fishing video without talking about some kind of stick bait, right? You guys know how much Matt and I love the Yamamoto Senko. In all of our underwater tests, all of our tests that we've done, you know, watching the actions of the baits, the slow flutter, the slow shimmy, if you will, hands down, a Yamamoto is the best stick bait on the market for me. If money's on the line, or I'm fishing for, you know, big fish, or I'm fishing pressured waters, I'm going with the Yamamoto Senko. You know, their colors are second to none. However, they are very salty. They aren't as durable as some of the other baits, and they can be a little bit pricey, or not necessarily pricey, but pricier than some of the other stick baits in the category. And so that's what I got for you today. We're talking about the Z-Man, the Zinkers, okay? Let me grab these baits real quick. This bait is not too expensive, but it is a Laztec, so super durable. So when I was putting together this list of top 5 baits for pond fishing, you know, I understand that money is tight, that we want to go out and catch a lot of fish for as little money as possible. So when I was pulling these baits today, I was thinking about budget options. So this is a fantastic stick bait. It's a Laztec, like I said, so it's high float, but again, super durable, okay? So that is an awesome option for a guy that wants to go out and catch 15 or 20 fish on one bait. That guy right there is awesome. And then another great alternative, again, super inexpensive in the category. This guy right here, that is the Trick Stick by Big Bite Baits. Yep, Trick Stick, that is tilapia color. You can see for $3.49 is what I paid for that bag, and there's 8 baits in there, so not, I mean, about 2/3 or you know, of the price of the Senko. But again, that will get it done in these pond fisheries. Unless you're fishing a highly pressured fishery, a highly pressured pond, that's when I will go with the Yamamoto, when, like I said, that confidence bait is that Senko. But for the most part, a lot of the ponds that I've grown up fishing, or a lot of ponds that I have had the ability to go fish, they aren't that picky, right? Pond fish can be, I mean, if it's moving, typically they'll chase it down and eat it. So my number 2 bait, or my number 4 on the list, is going to be a stick bait. So we did number 5, we did number 4, number 3, gonna be this guy right here. Again, these are coming right off of the rods that my kids and I fish, we pond fish. So this guy right here, a soft plastic jerkbait. Specifically, that is the Whiplash Shad by X Zone. What's cool about this bait, again, it doesn't break the bank, but it has a ton of action. It is very, very soft. It can almost be fished just like the weightless stick bait, right? You can just throw it out there, let it fall, and it has that kind of that dying swimming action. Again, we're fishing around stuff. We're fishing around vegetation. So rip, pause, let that thing dart off, and then it falls like a dying bait fish. Again, we're rigged weedless, okay? We're rigged, Texas rig weedless, so it can go in and around vegetation without getting hung up. I typically rig this on a 3/0 super line hook. A super line hook, if you're not familiar with it, it's a thicker wire diameter. It's a heavy duty hook, if you will. But the 2 great things about that, one, you don't have to worry about bending out that hook because it's extra heavy, it's super strong. But 2, it gives that bait more weight, a lower center of gravity. So it helps that bait sink. If you rig it kind of towards the front, it'll help that bait dive. If you rig it farther back, centered on that belly, it'll help it kind of do that gliding motion. But having that heavier hook is a keel for that bait, and you can get real erratic with it, you can get real twitchy with it, and that thing will be dancing all over the place like a fleeing bait fish, a fleeing snack, and you will get bit. Great alternative. Again, we talked about that X Zone, that Whiplash Shad. Just a straight up fluke. Again, trying to simplify this for you guys, trying to minimize the dollars spent, but a super fluke, a Zoom super fluke, is an awesome, awesome bait. The reason I wanted to pull that one out of the package, you can see the size difference, but more importantly, you can see the flexibility of that X Zone. This thing has just, like I said, it has that, when you fish it slow, it has that kind of Senko shimmy, which works really well. But again, that super fluke, that Whiplash Shad, one or the other, but a soft plastic Texas rig jerkbait is my number 3 bait. All right, we're getting down to the top 2. This next one was hard because when you're trying to limit it to just 5 techniques, 5 baits, you know, you're running through all the different fish catches, you're running through all the different situations that you've come across while pond fishing, or at least that I've come across while pond fishing. So it was a toss-up for me between a shaky head and a Texas rig creature bait. So here's what we've got: a Texas rigged creature bait. Now, the benefit of that, again, we're talking weedless, right? We're talking weedless, we're talking power fishing, we're talking in and around and through vegetation. I got one bait for you. This guy right here, almost dropped it. The Missile Baits Destroyer. This thing has a great body on it, a ribbed body, so lots of plastic there, so you can rig that same Superline hook on, but then you have some long appendages that just kind of just mosey their way through that vegetation. If you're just dragging it along bottom, or you hop it up and let it fall, it's just gonna kind of, these tentacles are kind of like twirl or swim their way down. But that is a must, a Texas rig creature bait. Again, lots of movement, lots of subtle action, but it's a bait that you can fish in and around and through all that vegetation. You can fish it down deep if you want to, but I went with the creature bait over the shaky head. And here's why. If you take your favorite creature bait, you're gonna Texas rig it. You're gonna run a Texas rig, a bullet weight in front of your hook. A shaky head has that weight out in front of your favorite worm. But here's the deal. Again, we're pond fishing, we're walking typically. We're not wanting to take a bunch of rods. Typically, I limit it to 3 rods. But here's the deal. That same rod, or that same way that I rig my favorite stick bait, if I take that Texas rig weight that I'm gonna use for my creature bait and put that in front of my stick bait, I basically have what the same a bait that will fish in that same category as the shaky head. Yeah, it's gonna be a Texas rig bullet weight worm, but it's gonna be weight forward, weight at the head, still gonna be weedless. So I figure if I'm buying weights, I'm buying hooks, I'm making sure I'm buying hooks that'll work on multiple baits. I'm making sure that I buy weights that will work on multiple techniques. So putting that weight out in front of that stick bait is why I didn't put this shaky head in the top 5. I figure that Texas rig creature bait just has a little bit more action, a lot bigger profile, and it has kind of that extra movement that you don't get out of a straight tail worm. Now, one tip for you guys that I've learned through the years, when I actually dropped it over here in the grass, I can't find it, but when I'm picking out my Texas rig weight, typically go as light as you can. You don't need, well, for the most part, obviously we understand there's variables for every different situation, but for the most part, you want to go with as light of a Texas rig weight as possible. I love those little X-Zone tungsten weights. We'll link all this stuff down below in the video description, but whether it's a 1/8 ounce or a 3/16 or even up to a 1/4, I'm typically going as light as possible, because here's the deal. I don't need my bait crashing through the grass unless I'm punching, right? I'm trying to punch through that vegetation. I want to be able to make a cast out there, have that bait come up and over the grass as you get into a less dense area of the grass or more sparse area of the grass, right? I want that bait to just kind of swim down slowly along that grass edge. I don't need it to just crash down. There are instances for that, but for the most part, if I'm just pond fishing and I'm casting and chucking and winding, I'm casting out there, I'm letting that thing kind of dance all over. I already put that bait away, but I'm letting that Texas rig creature bait kind of just swim all over the edges of the grass, or I'm throwing next to that overhang and I'm just dragging it over and I'm letting it fall slowly. Again, these fish aren't that picky, but when they see that bait just kind of swimming down, they eat it. So if you can, go with the smallest or lightest Texas rig weight you possibly can, okay? There it is, Texas rig creature bait. All right, my #1 bait for my top 5 pond fishing baits for summer. How do you do a pond fishing video without talking about a topwater, but without talking about a frog, right? A frog is a bait that I always have with me, especially when I'm pond fishing. Again, grass, no grass, it doesn't matter. I'm throwing this thing right along shore. I'm bombing it out in the middle, but here's the deal. I'm typically going with a popping frog, something that has a face on it that I could bloop, bloop, work it like a popper, or walk it like a frog. It's the best of both worlds. Again, we're trying to save you money, trying to save you spending a bunch of extra cash on different baits. If you only had one, get yourself a popping frog. This guy right here, that's that Swamp Lord. Matt and I have fallen in love with this little guy. It's got a great hook on it. Again, power on power. We're throwing straight braid 65. You can get away with 50, but I typically recommend 65-pound straight braid on the frog. But again, a frog in and around that grass, in and around those laydowns, out in the middle working like a popper is a must. Now, there are very few times where I've went to a pond and thrown a topwater, thrown a frog, and didn't get bit. There are those special occasions where those fish just don't want to come up and commit to something on top. That's where you get them with that fluke or that whiplash shad. You can work that really quickly across the tops of the grass, let it fall, and they'll eat it on the fall. But if you find yourself at a pond, my #1 bait is the frog. Guys, hopefully this gives you guys the confidence to get out there and do some shore fishing yourself. Get out there and chase those big bass out in the ponds. But guys, as always, we appreciate the support. I'll link everything down below in the video description. All of my favorite baits, favorite hooks, weights, and the specific gear that we use for them. Again, I'm typically bringing 3 rods. I'm bringing 1 rod, straight power fishing, straight braid, either 50 or 65 pound braid, you know, a 7.2 to a 7.6, either heavy or extra heavy power. And then I'm going with something that can kind of do everything. I'm going with like a 7.2, a 7 foot to a 7.2 medium or a medium heavy bait caster. And then my third one's gonna be like a 6'10 medium or a 7 foot medium, something that I can throw the fluke or the whiplash shad on, and the weightless stick bait, right? Again, we're using that same hook, that 3/0 super line. It'll work great for both. But if you're a guy that needs to have 1 spinning rod, go with like a 7 foot, 7'2" medium power, fast action, and you will be set. But I'll link all that stuff down below in the video description. Typically, we're going braid to leader or straight braid on that, on the flipping, pitching stuff or the top water. But guys, as always, we appreciate the support. If you have any questions, please leave those down below in the comment section. I'll try to get those as soon as possible. And as always, guys, we appreciate the support. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and we will see you guys on the next video.